Hey guys, Break here. Today I'm going to be doing a video about Warforging and Titanforging in World of Warcraft Legion, and how I think, despite the popular opinion that it's a load of rubbish, it actually provides a lot of content, a lot of choice, and a lot of variability to a lot of people's gameplay. I'm sure this is going to be a controversial video with a lot of dislikes because most people absolutely hate the system, it seems like. But I'm going to be providing my opinion and the reasons I actually quite like it in a less extreme form. I don't think you should be able to get 955 gear from LFR or whatever. But in general, I think it's a really cool system when implemented correctly, and I'll explain why I think that. Now, the title of this video is Make Gear Great Again. And what I mean by that is gear seems to have taken a bit of a downturn in recent expansions, and it seems to have gotten a little bit dull. As in, once you get to the new raid, all other gear goes out the window. All you do is farm up that new gear, whatever it is, put it on, and there you go, you're done. No thought involved, no, special sort of great feeling when you get a piece of gear from any other bit of content apart from the new piece of content, and it's really not a great feeling in my opinion when the only gear that's useful is the gear from the very current raid tier and the very highest difficulty, and anything else there's literally no point doing because you're not going to get an upgrade. Lots of people like to reminisce about the early expansions of WoW and how they remember the really cool things you could do with gear, such as farming up shadow resistant gear or getting a really overpowered piece from one of the early raids and using it throughout the expansion, all of that kind of stuff. The same kind of thing Blizzard tried to introduce with legendaries in this expansion, which I think failed terribly because legendaries are very difficult to get in terms of time spent, and it's very RNG based. You never know which legendary you're going to get. However, the RNG from Warforging and Titanforging gear, I think, brings back a bit of that feeling of progression and replayability and interest in other pieces of content that's not purely the hardest difficulty of the newest raid. So I first wanted to start off by saying how the 2 sets, 4 sets, the set bonuses are a major reason why I think Warforging has a place in the game. If you look at my gear here, this is my Mythic? Oh, it's my Mythic Plus gear. So I wear 2 set of the Nighthold raid because that gives me a ton of mastery, which is great for Resto Druids whenever I wild growth, which we always wild growth. But I also use a 4 set of the new raid. Look at that, a Raid Finder Titanforge, lucky me. I'm not such a fan of Raid Finder being able to Titanforge. Maybe Raid Finder should just Warforge. All the other normal heroics should be able to Titanforge. That's what I do. But anyway, I use the 4 set of that because it's actually pretty good in Mythic Plus, especially the 4 set Efflorescence Healing by 200% whenever you Swift Mend. It actually completely changes up the way you play, which I think is always good for gear. We need to make gear great again. We want gear to actually make a difference to how you play and not just be a stat upgrade. But the good thing about the Warforging Titanforging system is it actually makes it worthwhile to be able to use the 2 set of the previous tier. Look, I've got a Titan Forged here, Heroic Titan Forged back, and 905 item level actually isn't too bad. That's similar to what you get from normal version of the new raid Tomb of Sargeras. It's not really that new anymore, but it allows you to make it worthwhile equipping this 2 set. I've got a 905 cape. What else have we got? This heroic piece from the new raid is only 915, so there's not that much difference, and it kind of enables you to be able to make that choice. And choice is a really great thing in this game. One thing we haven't talked about is the sort of extra content this brings. Now lots of people say, oh, it's not extra content, you're just running the old raid tier for a chance to get a Titan Forge, it's just boring, blah de blah de blah. But let's be honest, no one runs Emerald Nightmare to try and get a Super Titan Forge bit of gear, because it's capped out, you can't get 955 from Emerald Nightmare. So it's only really worth running one tier below your tier for the chance to get those upgrades. For example, if you're a normal Tuma Sargeras raider, normal Tuma Sargeras, what does it drop? Have I got any normal pieces here? 910, 905, 900, something like that. And heroic Nighthold even, that drops slightly similar, about 890 it drops. So the difference between heroic Nighthold and normal Tomb, and bear in mind most people are just normal raiders and heroic raiders, there are very few mythic raiders out there, and the difference between a normal Tomb and a heroic Nighthold is very, very small, only 10 item level, 15 item level. And when you add Titanforging to that, you know, you can actually get similar pieces of gear from Nighthold if you're relatively lucky compared to Tomb. And again, that gives you the option to be able to switch up tier sets for different fights, to be able to switch up pieces of gear, different stats, etc, etc. More choice is always a good thing. Back in Warlords of Draenor, everyone was complaining there's nothing to do. Well, now you can have something to do. You can run the old raid. I love running old. I don't know if this is just me, I might just be weird, but I actually really enjoy running Mythic Nighthold for the chance to get cool tier upgrades. Like I really want the 4 set of Nighthold, which I don't have in any good item level, but I really do want that because it's actually better for some tomb fights. So if I were to get the 4 set, I'd be really happy, and I do run Mythic and even Heroic Nighthold sometimes still to try and get a Warforged piece of that 4 set and, you know, be able to add it to my gear inventory and switch things up depending on the different boss fights in the new raid. This is going to be even more controversial, but I actually really like general sort of Warforging. People still run with a Jim for the OP trinket stat stick he drops, and I kind of think that's quite cool, like getting really excited because it's a with a Jim week, going over there, killing it every time, even bonus rolling on it for the chance to get that really OP trinket. And I think they did go a bit too far. It's been too OP for too long, but it's not, I don't think it's actually the best trinket for any class anymore, but it's usually like the 2nd or 3rd best trinket. For some class it probably is still the best, but for the ones that it was best for, it's now been overtaken most of the time. And I don't know, I just think it's quite cool that you can still get a relevant piece of gear from content that most people would consider not relevant anymore. You know, world bosses drop 860 gear, even if it Titanforge is going to be like 880. No one's going to get excited about an 880 piece of gear unless it is that 880 trinket, and then people would get really excited. If we have a look at nether shards, I still run the invasions whenever they're up. I still need to do this one because I want to get to 5k nether shards. I want to open up usually I'll go for the trinkets because it can drop any OP trinket, and if it Warforges or Titanforges, then I'm going to be super happy because it may well be an upgrade. Now I do obviously see the problems with this system. A lot of people think that you should be able to complete your gear and get the very highest gear in the game. So I would say potentially no Warforging in LFR and no Warforging in Mythic. So I think the Mythic raid gear should be upped a little bit, and I think that should be the best gear in the game. So it can't Warforge. If you get a Mythic piece of gear, it's probably going to be best in slot, and then it will stop the completionists from complaining or being upset that they can't get the very best gear possible, because I think that's cool. I think that's something cool to be able to work towards if you are a Mythic raider, and I don't think they should bother with Titanforging or Warforging in Mythic raids. But for us normal and heroic raiders, I think that there should be Titanforging, there should be Warforging, but up to a certain extent. So not to go as high as Mythic quality gear, but to just be able to Warforge high enough to make the gear relevant. Especially for the previous tier, I think that should be able to, if you do run Mythic Nighthold, I think that should be able to Warforge to the level of Heroic Tomb. Do I think it should be able to be Mythic Tomb? No, leave that to the Mythic Raiders, but I think it should be able to Warforge enough for it to be relevant and to give you the choice of whether or not to use it. Overall, I just think in a game that is kind of getting easier, Blizzard are trying to cater to a more casual audience in general by the ability pruning, etc. I think any way to customize your character more and to improve choice over your character, I think that's a really good thing, especially if you can actually make the gameplay harder but with better results. For example, my Mythic Plus, where I use the 2 set and 4 set, and the way to combine them, maybe switch it up depending on the dungeon, all of that good stuff is just going to make a lot more complex decisions available, but a lot more beneficial outcomes if I can master those decisions. This is a system that needs small adjustments rather than to be completely removed, no matter what the vocal minority seem to think. I think that they don't really understand what life would be like without this system and how kind of more dull it would be than what it is now. I mean, can you imagine Legion with no Warforge, no Titanforge? So you would never really run the lower raid tiers because it wouldn't be much point. Okay, you might run it for Legendary and AP, but say they got rid of those as well. We're not talking about those. You would never do the world boss because the 860 Arcana Crystal wouldn't be worth it. And you would kind of never bother doing the lower tier of difficulty of the current raid. For example, I always run LFR, I always run normal, and I always run heroic before I start mythic progression in Tomb. Okay, I've only killed one mythic boss, but we're going to kill it mythic. We're going to call it mythic progression, guys. It makes me feel better. But I still run. Mostly I run it for legendary, but also for the chance to get a better tier set or a better piece of gear. Because Warforged, look, Titanforged Raid Finder. Okay, lots of people are going to be mad about that. Again, I don't think this should be a thing. But it does encourage people to run these pieces of content, and I just think that's a good thing. It's an MMO, there should always be something to do. If you want a game to complete, go play a single player game, to be honest. Anyway, that's it for this controversial video, guys. I'm sure it's going to get a lot of dislikes, but that's okay. We are all entitled to our opinions on this. I just can't really imagine Legion without any sort of Warforged, because it would make a lot of content irrelevant, and as we've seen with the new time walking raid, new time walking dungeons, the invasions, etc., etc., Blizzard are always trying to make content relevant because we're living in a massive multiplayer online world. There's so many things. Look at this world. Okay, I can't zoom out. Oh, that's great. Where are we? World. Here we are. Look at all this. And how much of it is relevant? This. Only that. It's kind of sad. We need to make more of it relevant. And although not a perfect system, Warforging and Titanforging is a good start. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and until next time, see ya!